In this presentation, I will be discussing how mandatory overtime is leading to medical error and some solutions that I believe could potentially help with solving this issue. Hospitals are severely understaffed, which is forcing nurses who have already worked an excruciating 12-hour shift to work even longer. This is causing nurses to make unintended errors with patients due to the substantial amount of hours that are being worked. Hospitals not meeting proper staffing specifications is leading to exhaustion, the inability to make logical, clear decisions, work burnout, and a terrible work-life balance. Not only are these nurses just working one overtime shift a week, but they are working multiple overtime shifts in 1 week. It has also been proven that nurses who work longer than 12 hours in one shift are more likely to make errors versus a nurse who has not and is well rested. The most helpful solution to this problem would be to hire more staff. This must be a priority to the hospital because the bills from medical error are much higher than just hiring another nurse to work the overtime. Patients would feel much safer knowing they have a well-rested nurse, which will have a very positive effect on the issue. The second solution I'm using to address this problem would be to allow nurses to volunteer or decline overtime. If a nurse clearly knows he or she is exhausted, then they should be able to decline the overtime. But if a nurse who only has worked 10 hours in his or her shift, then that person should come to volunteer to work the overtime. This would potentially create a better work-life balance. This solution should always be given if the specific nurse has already worked their scheduled 12-hour shift. Another solution would be for hospitals to hire nurses from a private doctor's office. This could substantially decrease the amount of mandatory overtime because the nurse who works full-time 12-hour shifts would not have to work the overtime. Therefore, errors could also drastically decrease. The nurses who would work the overtime coming from private offices have the same qualifications as a nurse in the hospital, but they only work from 9 to 5. The nurses coming from outside offices would only have to work a few hours and would not be working with the fatigue that other nurses would be. As more staff is hired, costs and expenses will also increase for the hospital. On average, it costs about $4,000 to $7,645 to hire someone. The expenses include job board fees, background checks, onboarding, and a lot of training. As a hospital grows larger, a human resources department is also needed, which estimates about $91,000 to $120,000 per year. There are certain circumstances in which mandatory overtime is inevitable. These circumstances would include instances such as natural disasters, a code that is currently in progress, or other large-scale incidents. These other instances could include a major wreck or a mass shooting. One solution that has proven itself to be effective is banning mandatory overtime completely. This has been done so far in 18 states. This is essentially part of my solution by allowing nurses to decline overtime requested by the hospital. With this being proven in over a quarter of the United States, it is time for this law or an enhanced version of this law to be enacted on the federal level.